Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Kalle Sirkesalo, presenting the topic, What made you fast yesterday is making you slow today.
Hello. Oh, yeah. So I'm Kalle Sirkesalo. I'm here today. Hopefully it works. Yep. To talk about what made you fast yesterday is making you slow today, and it's all about the fact that, like, if you have noticed, we are kind of just adding more and more to IT. Like, how many of you have more than one version control in use, for example? How many of you have seen more than 2 CIs in your company? Okay, we are not in the mode of voting yet, or 10 people who just have a really good IT infrastructure. So who am I? I'm Kalle. I work as a CTO of managed services for Efficode. And this trend that I'm going to be talking about is fantastic for us, like amazing. I get to talk to customers and I go there and I ask, where is your source code? And they tell me, well, we have SVN, Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab. We probably still have Perforce, some CVS, and a few NFS disks that we put the code to. And oh yeah, Peter is writing to USB stick because like he doesn't believe in internet yet. And then you're like, okay, so we probably need to talk about this. But anyway, I'm in charge of this product called Root, which is DevOps as a managed service. And during my summers, I sail, and during my winters, I procrastinate like every single Finnish person. I've been doing 10 years of DevOps. So where this all starts is the fact that like GitLab did a research that 1/4 of your developers' time goes to different kind of toolchain issues, developing toolchains or doing toolchains. There was another research by Forrester, which is at this point almost 10 years old, which was that 10% of it goes there. So we can assume that at this point, it's probably even higher than 25%. But imagine that you have a 5-person team. One of those people is constantly doing Kubernetes administration. Probably you have seen it. Someone's going to be doing cloud thing, Terraforms. Or we need to tune some of the Git stuff. All the other stuff. Like, we're constantly spending time on things that are not creating the software. So one of my colleagues did a value stream mapping of what is actually happening from creation of the ticket. So identifying that we have something to getting it to production. All the red boxes are manual steps that happen during the work. So anything that has a red box stops everything and just everybody stops, someone has to do something. And this is the whole process of the customer's software development. And as you can see, it always starts with Excel. Like, if you haven't seen an Excel-driven organization, you haven't seen any organization. The big thing here is this. This is where we create the value that goes to the customer. Like, we have done value creation before starting the work, because we have identified if the customer needs it, probably. We have done some mappings, figuring out what is the specification. But when the ticket arrives, this is where we are. Like, this is what creates the value. This is what the developer is going to do 25% of their time, probably. As we remember from yesterday's keynote, they're going to spend most of their time in meetings, 50% if I remember correctly. Then they're going to spend from the leftover 50% of time tunking their tools. So you have 50% left on doing development. But then you have to also remember the cat pictures with ChatGPT, etc. So probably like 10% of the time we program. Which is good, because lines of code doesn't matter at all, and we'll get there. So coming back to here, value creation is not what we do. It's value verification. Like, we want to make sure that the system stays stable. We keep releasing and we keep doing things so that customers can keep working. But why, when we go to DevOps tools, we focus on this part? Like, every time we're buying a tool, Like, let's say you want to do something in Kubernetes. Someone tells you, hey, let's take into use HashiCorp Vault. We're going to focus on this part. Like, how do we deploy it? What's the setup? How easy is it? How fast can we deploy Vault into our Kubernetes cluster? I can have a Helm chart ready to go. And then I'm supposed to have a honeycomb here, but like it's not working. But then we have all of the other stuff: security, best practices, onboarding, trainings. How are we going to be upgrading it? Who is tracking the upgrades? What are we doing? We are creating an uncontrolled cost that nobody is thinking about in the long term, because we are just focusing on how fast is it to deploy, which is fantastic in sense, but it forgets the big picture that like, hey, why are we adding this? And asking the why. And this leads to the situation where complex toolchains slow you down. So if you have ever noticed, having a complex toolchain doesn't actually speed you up. So when you add more tools, when we take into use more tools in our Kubernetes cluster, when we take more tools into use in cloud, when we take into use even like a feature in certain tool, we become more scarce, and there is less and less people who know what is happening in our toolchain. Like, have you noticed that when you have more and more customized toolchain, like you started with Maven, for example, for Java programmers. I know there's a lot of Java programmers here. And then we keep adding stuff on top of that. Bit by bit, you have less and less people who know what is happening, and the onboarding time goes longer. And we get farther and farther away from focusing on generating the actual thing that we were talking about. We're also building technical depth, because every time we're adding more stuff into our tools, our working ways, and things that we are working on. We keep growing that depth, because we're not going to do it properly. Because if we add a tool every week, every month, every quarter, we're probably going to not do it so that everybody knows how to use it. We're probably not going to have best practices. We're probably not going to have a solution architecture for it. And nobody's going to know why did we take it. Because we are taking them into use so fast that most of the team doesn't even know that we took it into use. And then the question is, should we probably communicate about it? But how do we communicate if we don't actually sit down and think about why are we taking it into use? How many of you have ever seen a solution architecture description, for example? So SAT document. 2 people. So SAT documents are sad because they are super long text about the current situation that we are taking into use and why. And they're in corporates constantly in use. They have different names. We also have star documents and so on. But the key here is that you are trying to explain how are you managing these things. And how do we avoid creating highly specific tools? Like when we're doing deployments to Azure, does everybody need to invent the wheel again? Or could we use the same templates again? Because our team is doing so different with these VM deployments, we need to develop this ourselves, and like we can't use the other guy's code. No, you should probably just copy paste from one place and like have the encryptions enabled, because now you forgot the disk encryptions because you were focusing on something else. It affects everybody because you're keeping doing the basic things over and over again without thinking the future. And then we finally get to the last part. Like we have all these tools that are giving you metrics. But if nobody, like if one team is only using it, you have a metric from here, metric from here, metric from here, and they're all collected differently. They're all different. And then you have what Darren in his previous security talk was talking about, statistics. And as we know, statistics are just someone's pick of data that they have selected. And most likely, as we could look from Harvard Business Study, for example, they might be lied or cherry-picked or cheated. And nobody knows, because who from us has ever gone through a 10,000 row Excel? Yeah. So what does this actually look like, this like horrible situation? Well, this is your DevOps pipeline in 2023. I haven't done 2024 version yet. But you start by development team here, and you have different boxes that are yellow, like concepts that I've been trying to draw. And then you have a bit more detailed things that go usually into one tool or another. And it all leads to this like end user experience and application development over here. And we have a bunch of things that most of you probably don't even have. So these are the concepts that we are working on when we are creating those pictures that I was showing, the value stream map. But in reality, it doesn't really look like this. It looks like this. So you're probably finding your favorite tool, and some of you are like, where is my favorite tool from it? I couldn't fit everything into one picture. But it's like, the whole idea is that like, this is the landscape that we're working on. This is the place where we're working on. This is where every big corporation is at the moment, because every team is picking their tools, doing things. When I go to a customer, I nowadays have a mirror board where I start throwing based on their discussion about different tools that they mentioned to me during the talk. And my average is that I get like 10 different tools listed within one phone call. And I'm like, if I go deeper, I usually find like 40. So we do all kinds of like assessments to figure this out. And I hope one day I could actually release some data from it, but not today. But this is your DevOps pipeline. So you might be to me, but we're doing platform engineering. We're putting everything to Kubernetes. Everything is automated by Backstage. We're super far ahead, and everything is easy. Well, in the back end, this is what it looks like when you have a platform team. Big boxes are missing still because I'm working on it. That's why it's not artistic and so on. So we have ridiculous amount of concepts in operations that we are all automating, putting into a box, and offering as a self-service button. And that's going to be fantastic for the 15 minutes that it works. And then some platform engineer has to go and change something because Google just disabled Google DNS or something like that. And now you're like, okay, we're going to move everybody to Route 53. Okay, but now we need to do a migration back to the old guys. And you're like, oh. And then you have a guy who is like, but how about my on-premise Kubernetes? I want the same features for it. And you're like, okay, I need to talk to the on-premise and DNS. And then the on-premise DNS guys are like, no, you can just use the Route 53. You go to the AWS team and they're like, no, you need to go to Azure because we are forwarding it to Azure. And you're like, I just want a one DNS record. How hard can this be? And then you repeat it to every one of these and you're in the enterprise architecture. But the good thing is, we don't have to focus on all of these because like we can think about our software. We can take a look back and think about what is actually critical. So I'm not going to go to the ops today, hopefully someday, but not today. I have given some opinions here that like you could do serverless to remove a bunch of boxes. You could do managed applications to remove a bunch of boxes. You could containerize it, or you can do what most enterprises do. You just throw it to someone else and make it someone else's problem. Why do you guys think SaaS is such a big thing? Like, why do we go to github.com? Why do we go to salesforce.com, hubspot.com, and so on? It's because all of these become someone else's problem. As said, cloud is someone else's problem usually. So what we can do in DevOps is we can think about what does the developer actually see. So this is what your developer usually actually sees. They see their IDE. So most likely, everyone here has a different IDE that they favor. I know from yesterday's Java talk that Eclipse is not really the favorite of everybody. I know IntelliJ is high in Java developers, but I myself moved completely to Visual Studio and Visual Code when they came to Mac, because I like the way of working with those. But every one of us has our own opinion. And most of my engineers love Vim. It's like, thankfully we don't have that many Emacs people with the pedals, because if you have heard Emacs pedals ever, it is very noisy. So I recommend putting the Emacs people into their own cubicle instead of the open office, because like it's wild what it sounds like. But it's really fast to program with those. I tried. The other thing that they love, because like IDE, of course a developer loves their IDE. That's where they spend their time doing their favorite thing, coding. Then they also like their instant messaging system. Like, they might hate Teams, but they still use it. They might hate Slack, and they still use it. And it's not because it's easy. It's not because it makes them their communication easier. It's because they keep sending ChatGPT generated cat pictures to another developer and laughing at them. And if you haven't seen that happening, then you most likely haven't talked to your developers enough. But based on my knowledge, most of my developers are not using ChatGPT to generate code. They're not using it to ask questions. They do that also with it. But most of the time, I just get cat pictures generated by AI from them, or anything else, like incident ongoing at a customer. Someone generates an AI picture about the incident to make it funnier. And that's fun. Like that is exactly what I need, because like it makes the situation human, even though it's completely AI. But like it makes everyone relax and think about what are we actually doing. And that's nice, because then the people are actually having the conversation and not yelling about each other. And then they have a third thing that they love: their version control system. Like, I don't understand to this day how you can get such a big fight between people using GitLab or GitHub, and they're using the same thing. The other guys call it merge, other guys call it pull request. But they can fight about it for an hour, which is correct and why is it better. And then the whole thing is just the same discussion goes constantly. And you're just like, it's all code. You're anyway going to pull it to your laptop to actually read it and build it. And you're actually going to write it from your IDE to review. Because you can integrate your IDE to your Git if you didn't know. But these are the three things that your developers most of the time see. There is a fourth thing, but I have forgotten it here due to our slides being made for 3. And the fourth thing is their browser. And I don't want to know what they do with the browser. Like, no. But if you think about this, and you look at the picture that I showed you before, this one. How many tools here is the developer ever going to look at? And how many of them are they going to care? The answer is 3, still. So, we could theoretically make it simpler. And there's going to be a nice talk based on my talk yesterday with Kaufman, who is talking on Soundtrack about GitHub Advanced Security. So we're not going to go deep into it. But ideology is that you can simplify these things by looking at it and not remove the tool perhaps, but make it so that the developer sees everything in his pull request, for example. Because he's not going to go and read the thing in Sonarqube. We all know no developer is going to go to Sonarqube and read about the code quality. Well, okay, I know. There's someone here who is like, I love my Sonarqube dashboards and it's fantastic, and I like to see the code complexity growing over time and seeing the difference between brands and so on. I like that too. But the reality is, when we do changes for 6,000 developers, it's not really that most of them are enthusiastic about one thing. They are there to make code because they like coding. Or money that comes from coding. But ideology is that you can integrate GitHub Advanced Security, for example, to multitude of other security products and bring it visible to a developer who can then fix it without ever leaving GitHub, their IDE, and working from there. I could have removed Jira from here and Confluence, because you can also build smart commits. Has anybody ever used smart commits? Okay, that's no hands. So smart commits, if you don't know, which is based on the hands not lifting, is that you type the Jira ticket's short name and the number to the ticket, and then you can put hashtag comment, and it sends a comment to your Jira version control, from your version control to Jira, and you can actually never go to Jira as a developer, which is fantastic, because like that's what I hope. I don't need to go to Jira. I just go to Power BI to read the reports out of Jira. That was supposed to be a joke. But anyway, like ideologically, like we need to think about more. How do we get the developer to get the same information we're trying to do here without them having to go across everything here? And it needs to integrate to some of the things that they're doing here. So you might be, okay, nice idea. We can simplify it. We can make it easier. and that's gonna be nice. And how am I getting funding to this? Well, you do know this is not just an IT developer problem to this day. I spent yesterday 15 minutes thinking about our organization and the customer organizations, and they're business people. The people who are in charge of the business, what are they doing? This is how far I got in 15 minutes. Again, yellow boxes are concepts, and they are connected by pink boxes. If I had enough time, I'm pretty sure I would have blown this thing up to the same level as the other ones. And the thing here is, all of this is going to be massive headache to someone, most likely your security, for example. It's most likely going to slow them down, because every time you're like, okay, where are the contracts? Well, let me go to SharePoint to find the link to Office 365, to find the link to Google Drive, where I find a link to an Luminance or some comparable like contract management system. And then you're just like, what did you just say? Yeah, that's the fastest path I have found. But isn't the link in Salesforce? Yeah, that doesn't work because nobody ever updates it. And then we get to the actual meat of the thing. It's not the tools that are the problem. It's the tools and processes being on alignment. So when we take into the tools, if you remember the beginning picture, you need to actually think about why we are doing it. What are we doing with it? How are we doing things? When are we doing things? And where are we taking them? Because if we don't do that, we're kind of in a problem. So if we focus on too few of the tools, we're going to have a problem where everybody's going to be like, but now we don't actually get the security ratings. We don't actually cover X, Y, Z. But then if we use too many tools, we have this situation that most of you probably have. How many of you have over 10 tabs open on your browser? Yeah, that's what I assumed. Most of them are probably your different tools that you need to use during your day. Yeah, some nodding. Yeah. So the key is we have way too much swapping between our day just to think about different tools that we need to use. So think about the fact that like you are a newcomer to an organization that is a junior, for example. You're coming into the organization, and the first thing that someone tells you, yeah, welcome to the organization. So first of all, let's go to Jira to find your onboarding tickets. Then we're going to go and update your data to our HR system. It's going to be in some HR system, like Workday. Then we're going to go to the e-learning platform, where you're going to do your courses on your compliance and so on. And you need to do those every quarter or so. Then we're going to set up your VPN. Okay, but to get the VPN, we need to go to Confluence to get the information about the thing, because that's where the guidance is. And by the way, you probably need a phone, so we should go to ServiceNow or Jira Service Management to get like a ticket open for your phone, because I forgot to order it. How many of you have seen this in real life? Yeah. Like, and we see it as a completely normal thing. Like, it's completely normal for us that when you go to a new company, or even in your company, you might see 5-6 tools coming into use during a 1 year. And then you ask, like, why did we do this? Exactly. Nobody knows. Like, someone had an idea and like it was taken into use. It was cheap. So people were like, yeah, that sounds good. And nobody actually did a business case for it. Nobody thought about what are we doing with it. And that led to that tool being just in use. So, example of this getting out of hand. So we start, like, think about this picture as an AI, and you have ChatGPT. It came out last January, basically. So Darren already bullied our CMO, so I can bully him also. So he started by taking into use ChatGPT immediately. He loves it. And for good reason. He's really good at using it. He's really good at prompt engineering. But he's made it look like this for everybody. Because last time I talked to him, he had 7 steps. I don't have the pictures because he didn't send me his workflow. Last time I talked to him, he had 7 steps to make a first prompt to your ChatGPT. So he started by writing the thing on a notepad. Then he took it to a tool that would generate, based on that, the estimated text that he would need, which he would then take to an automator that would like open up the terms that he had there, which he would then take to widen the topics with another AI tool. And then he would have this huge prompt that he could put into ChatGPT that would generate him an answer that would actually give the proper answer that he was looking for. And it is like fantastic what he can get out of that pipeline, because it really helps you like think about the topic and discuss about it and so on. And then you're there and you're like, I just write this query into ChatGPT like, hey ChatGPT, can you tell me what's the change management process? But like, if that's the AI track that we're gonna have, that everybody's gonna do 7 tools to do AI, like, I don't know what it's gonna look like in over here at that point. Because if you haven't noticed, every tool also has an own AI thing. Sorry, I shouldn't rant about that, but like, our recruitment system has an AI tool. Okay, well, no, I don't have that anymore. But our recruitment system has an AI tool that straight up lies to you when you read it, and tells you, for example, that this person has 10 years of experience in X. You go to the CV and X is not mentioned, and he doesn't have 10 years in anything because he's a junior. And you're sitting there and you're like, well, he's been alive for 10 years, yeah. And then you're like, and this is the AI that everybody's trusting. So again, coming back here, we need to build some processes. But if we build too many processes, what happens? Most of you probably have never read all of your processes and policies. Has anybody actually read their company's policies and policies and processes? Yeah, I guess we are 10, 20. So some people have actually read them. But I like that, for example, Darren did it with his hand, who has been writing those policies in our security. So most people do not actually read these things because it's too long, it's too many, and we keep adding them. So we need to actually also remove processes, same as we do for tools. So when you start your next transformation project around a tool, because someone told your CEO, hey, we need to take into use, let's say, GitLab. We are taking into use GitLab. You have to look into what can we remove then. Like, what is it that we don't need then? And then, when you're doing that, you need to also bring in some of the business people and ask them, which process can we remove because we are removing these tools. But then, because it makes it sound nice and dandy and easy to change tools and remove processes, yeah, don't do it immediately. Like, if you go into it and read like, hey, GitLab's features are these, and you're like, okay, I can remove Jira, I can remove Confluence, I can remove all my CIs, I can remove my GitOps platform because I'm going to use GitLab as a GitOps platform. I'm going to use GitLab for my feature flags. And then you go to the developers and you tell them, we're going to remove all of these tools and you're going to put everything in GitLab. You have 6 months, let's go. Yeah, it's not going to go well. Like, probably better practice is, let's start from slow. Let's think about what is the key things that we want to get rid of first. Probably we would like every version control system to be the same, or at least within the 2 things that we want them people to be. We probably want those people to use the same security tools, because otherwise our security doesn't have any idea what we're doing. We probably want everybody to use the same authentication process also, because I don't know how many of you have, but we have had in Code, for example, 4 authentications at the same time active due to mergers and acquisitions. It's down now because we have done a good job of removing them. But imagine having 4 different credentials for your normal work just to get to some few systems. Like, okay, I want to go read about Atlassian's our latest Jira projects. Okay, you have Jira 1, Jira 2, Jira 3, and Jira 4. And now we go back to the original picture that I had, and imagine those pink boxes duplicating or getting bigger. And yeah, that's what it is in life. Like this picture, if we don't do something to it, it's gonna blow up even bigger. And this picture is gonna be even worse than I have done here because I'm not even done. It looks like a mess already. Because Ops is not a pipeline. It's actually like living thing that has a bunch of things tied to it that we're trying to work out by putting everything into Kubernetes, but then we're adding more boxes into Kubernetes, and then it becomes, yeah, it's not a rant about against Kubernetes because it's a fantastic tool when you have a professional team doing it. So, thank you everybody. I don't have any solutions to this. Like my solution is start the transformation. Like I sit in 2 different customers in large organizations. One of them has a transformation leader who has responsibility over all of their development tools. And now, after 2 years, he knows how many developers they have. That was a bit of a problem when we didn't know how many developers the company has. Because like when you start the discussion, it's like, yeah, I think we have 6,000 developers. And then the guy is like, well, Bob just called me and he has 3,000 more developers that we didn't know about. And you're like, Bob just called you and you have 3,000 more developers? Yeah. He has this offshore team in India that has been working for him and he's offloaded everything there. But we don't know about them. Yeah, because they have a different email address because we did them on their own email boxes, etc. So we could control them better. But nobody knows about them. Yeah. Really, like, really hard to start transforming when you don't know even what you have. Then we have another company that I work with, and they had this situation where they were split off from another company, and they had to bring in with them all of the old company stuff. And when you split a massive enterprise and you give them 1 year to do it, so like get out of the systems in 1 year and take everything with you because you need all of that IPR with yourself. How do you even do it? Well, you take everything as is and deploy it as is somewhere. But now you became a smaller company with all of the enterprise debt that you had. If you remember from yesterday, enterprise debt also has an interest. And now you have an enterprise debt in a smaller company that has an interest of an enterprise level. So we started killing systems quite fast with them because they were just like, you know, if it has less than 10 people, we're going to kill it immediately and just migrate them to the new tool. So it was quite a lot faster there in the beginning because we could just kill old systems immediately because nobody was actually using them. But actually the other customer that I have is moving faster now that they got started because they had to build around the fact that, hey, we need to actually have a transformation lead. He needs to communicate. We need to build a communication pipeline. We need to create adoption pipelines. We need to create best practices. And we need to start creating a community around this so people are actually inner sourcing. If you don't know what inner sourcing is, it's basically your open source within your company. And it's quite hard because nobody pays for anything open source, just so you can imagine how much your company pays for inner sourcing. So, yeah, as said, I don't really have any solutions for you, so good luck, and yeah, thank you. Go have a coffee. We have a break. Oh, I have questions.
Yeah, you do have questions. We will be having coffee in, I believe, a few minutes. Kitos, I should say, yeah, and finish. Thank you. Kipis and kitos, two very important words, and I'm mistaking between those two. Questions goes like that. What is the balance between a tool to rule them all versus Linux way, aka lots of specialized little tools for single purpose?
So, I would say if you're a small company and you know the process, you know that the people know what they're going to use and when they're going to use them, Linux way is okay. But in large enterprise, if you don't actually like have if you haven't made it so everybody knows the purpose, you don't have proper communication, you don't have proper management of it, and you just throw it to a team like most enterprises do, the single purpose tools get really complicated really fast in the bottom layer. Like for management, it looks simple because you're just buying different tools for different things. But at the bottom, if you need to implement it and manage it, it becomes really hard. So I think it's not about having a tool to root them all or Linux way. It's about if I have Linux way of tools everywhere, in Linux you can actually integrate all of them together by just putting a pipe, or you can put an @ sign. So you can actually have these tools integrating and working together in 5 minutes, versus in software development, if you take into use, for example, JFrog's Artifactory and you want to bring in Sonatype's lifecycle, it's not gonna go well if you don't know what you're doing. And then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, but I want single reporting on artifact and their security flow and getting it all running. And you're like, okay, so now we start a data analytics project. We're gonna pull all the data. Oh, we need to also bring the Git data, but we have the secrets in Git. We also have things that shouldn't be visible anywhere to everybody in the company. So there is no golden rule for this. It's more about, if you look at it from the point of view of the developer, if the developer cries when you look at their pipeline or can't describe to you how they do software development and releases, you probably have too many tools, or you have too much, like they are too far away from how you're developing, like deploying the system, which means they don't actually know who is the customer. So bad answer, I know, but I would say both, but in like correct ratio. And I would say I would go with 50% on the like tool to root them all. So most of the major things can be done quickly and easily. So if I want to start a new project, I can do it with the tool to root them all. And when we decide to go to production and start doing like larger takeovers and more customers, then we would have specialized little tools that we have decided on that, hey, we need this, we need that, we need those. And we take them into use bit by bit. So we don't do, I don't know if you know Dome 9 reports from cloud side, but it is like, this is everything you have fault in your cloud system. And then user management is, yeah, you need to fix everything that this report says. And you look at it, and you know, first time you see it, you're like, this is 300 things. You probably want to start by 10 most important things at a time, because that's too many already.
All right, one more question from Slido platform, but maybe there is questions from audience. Do you want to ask something quickly? No? If yes, raise your hands. If not, maybe we'll see you at the Ask Me Anything corner. And do you have any advice for situations where your company has multiple subcontractors potentially with their own tool chains?
Get all your source code to your version control system. Like, that's my biggest gripe with any organization. Like, if you have subcontractors that are bringing their own CIs or deployment tools and so on, any data that you are paying for, any IPR that you are creating or buying from them that you own, should be in your version control system. Because if you're putting the data that you have and you're paying for in their version control system, it's not really your IPR at that point. Like, yes, legally it is, but they might not really realize that it is your IPR, and they need to actually like tell you that, hey, we are intending to use this elsewhere. So that's my like number one thing. Then the other one is, if they do all of the management and all of the things, do you really have to matter how they are doing the deployments and so on, as long as it's secure? So you might want to bring in to that version control system that you brought in binary management, where they bring in the binaries, and dependency management. So then you can do source code tracking. How good is the source code in general? So that if you ever have to take someone else to use it, you can actually know, yeah, the code is not completely horrible. And you know, for example, tests are being done, and you want to know the artifacts, are they safe? And dependencies, are they actually updating them? And with that, you actually at least know what's going on. Because you really don't want to take into any account, like, are they doing I don't know, are they doing Maven or C# or comparable? You don't care about that if you buy it from subcontractors.
Okay, and most probably last one, Sonarqube, is it worth it?
depends is the answer, like in always in IT. So theoretically, it gives you a lot of feedback. And the problem in software development often is that we get very little feedback on our work. Unless you're in a very high efficiency team, like you don't really see. How many of you have met a customer, for example, in the audience today? Yeah, one guy, two guys, two people lifted their hands about meeting a customer. Like, who are we doing this stuff is the customer. So we don't actually get any feedback from the customer. Our bosses don't give us any feedback. Like, when have you last time gotten a feedback from your boss about your development? Yeah. So Sonarqube, at least it gives you some feedback about how you could be better. But you need to remove the false positives.